Hey everyone, my name's Rachel and today we are looking back at this book, Evolution, The Lie by Ken Ham. It's a good joke. We've been looking at it for a while now actually just 2 videos I think, but I thought I'd bring it back again because we're only like a third of the way through the book and there's a lot more interesting content in here to get through. Normally I look at a couple of chapters, but today I don't have a huge amount of time, so we're just going to be reading one chapter titled Crumbling Foundations. It's all about why the world is falling apart because we don't believe in Genesis. As always, I'm just going to be reading a few excerpts. That's the word, right? Excerpts. I'm going to be reading a few excerpts from this book. I don't like that word. I'm going to be reading a few lines from this book, giving my comments on them, and then we're going to be seeing what you guys think. So he opens up this title called Crumbling Foundations by saying, evolution has been popularized and presented as scientific truth. Yeah, and it's been presented as a very likely scientific theory. It's been presented as something that there's a lot of evidence for. That's the reason it's become popular. It's been presented as scientific truth because it most likely is scientific truth. He complains that many Christians have added evolutionary belief to their biblical belief in God as creator. Thus, while many Christians acknowledge that God created, they believe he uses the process of evolution to bring all these things into beginning. This is usually called theistic evolution. I'm going to be honest, I have a bit of an issue with theistic evolution as well, because it doesn't make sense. At what point did God supposedly create all these things? Did he create a little single-celled organism and just plop that on Earth? Or did he create, you know, kind of humanoid ape-like things and plop them on Earth and then they evolved into, you know, types of monkey and ape and humans and all the different types? Like, at what point did evolution start, and at what point did God pop these animals and plants and bacteria? At what point did he pop them on the Earth? It doesn't make sense. So I'm with you on that, Ken. However, Ken's issue with theistic evolution apparently is that widespread confusion has resulted. It causes many to question the plain statements of the Bible. I mean, I don't know. To me, maybe that's an issue with what's in the Bible rather than evolution, but that's just my opinion. Christians are no longer sure of what is true and what is not. Too many Christians have not realized the foundational importance of the creation/evolution issue. As already indicated, there is a connection between origins and issues affecting society such as marriage, clothing, abortion, sexual deviancy, parental authority, etc. He says this has already been indicated. What he means is he's made this claim before. He hasn't done anything to back up this claim at any point in the book. He's just repeated this claim over and over. I think that's a technique that Ken has. If you repeat something enough, he just thinks you have to accept it as truth. Then he quotes the Bible a bit and talks about blah blah blah. And there's like 2 long paragraphs here where basically the summary is just Moses is bae and everyone loves Moses and you have to believe everything he says because Moses. And then he talks about Genesis a bit more and concludes, there is one book of Moses that is referred to more often in the rest of the Bible than any other book. That book is Genesis. But in theological and Bible colleges, in Christian and non-Christian circles, which book of all the Bible is most attacked, mocked, scoffed at, thrown out, allegorized and mythologized? The book of Genesis! He actually puts the emphasis on the text there. I'm not just shouting for the sake of it. I'm just going to throw this out there, but if something is, you know, mocked by a lot of people, if something is assumed to be a myth by a lot of people, chances are there's a reason for that. People don't just, like, you know, pick things at random and say, I'm just going to say that's a myth for the sake of it. Usually there's some, I mean, okay, maybe some people do that, but usually there's a reason behind that, right? I think Ken's just ignoring that here. To be honest, this reminds me of this issue that Dan had like 2 years ago with this girl who was like being creepy, and then Dan was like, can you not hit on me? I have a girlfriend. And then she got into this huge stress and started like throwing out insults and blah blah blah, and it all got like really messy. But then she was like, oh my god, I can't believe you're saying this to me. How can you be so mean to me? How can you say there's anything wrong with me? It's happened so much recently. I've had so many people say the same thing to me. Why are you all so mean? When Dan told me this, I was like, I'm sorry, but if several independent people are coming to you saying you have the same problem and you're doing the same things wrong, and that like you've been upsetting people because you're doing all of this same thing, maybe the issue's with you and not the other people. Just throwing that out there. I feel like that's exactly what Ken is doing here, but anyway. And then he has this little subheading called Foundations Under Attack. Not quite sure why. Just for funsies, I guess. He has this Bible quote of, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And then he says, it is important to understand the relationship of the psalm that the psalmist is making. It's the person who wrote the psalm. Society depends on moral foundations. Again, he's making a statement, not giving any truth. I actually kind of think there might be some truth in this, but I would like an academic study to back it up, to show the relationship between, you know, the success of a society and its morals, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure there's some study out there on something like that. But again, Ken doesn't bother to give proof, because who needs proof when you've got God? By a mutual agreement, which has sometimes been called a social contract, man, in an ordered, civilized society, sets limits to his own conduct. However, when such obligations are repudiated, I don't know that word, and the law collapses along with the order it brings, what option has the man who seeks peace? I might be the stupid one here, but Ken, big words don't make you sound any smarter. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah. Some quite correctly quoted scriptures in saying that Jesus Christ is the foundation, and he cannot be destroyed. But he died. In the context in which this verse from Psalm 11 is used, we are talking about the foundational knowledge upon which our moral framework is built. Okay. The foundational knowledge of Jesus Christ as creator can be removed in people's thinking, whether they are from Australia, America, England, or any other society. This means that in those nations that abandon this foundational basis, the whole fabric of society will suffer the consequences. Again, where's your proof? What is this suffering that you see? What about in societies that have never worshipped Jesus? I'll admit, some of them are a bit screwed up. But that's not a lack of Jesus, that's they have other screwed up beliefs. If you destroy the foundations of anything, the structure will collapse. You don't say, Ken. Some quality insights here. Clearly Ken must have an engineering degree to know this. Is it any wonder that Satan is attacking Genesis more than any other book? Oh, damn that Satan. Can you believe he's doing that? He must have an engineering degree as well to know that that book is the foundations and he attacked the foundations. Ugh. Satan's quite smart, isn't he, I guess? Yeah. Every single biblical doctrine of theology, directly or indirectly, ultimately has its basis in the book of Genesis. Not selling it to me here, Ken. We already know how flawed Genesis is. If you're saying the whole Bible, everything to do with Christianity rests on Genesis, and we know Genesis is a load of poop. Not selling the rest of the Bible or Christianity to me here. Just saying. Therefore, if you do not have a believing understanding of that book, you cannot hope to attain full comprehension of what Christianity is all about. If we want to understand the meaning of anything, we must understand its origins, its basis. I'm not sure how I feel about this. If you want to understand the meaning of anything, we must understand its origins. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see why understanding something's origins are important for understanding the thing, but I don't know if it's always necessary. Like in reading a work of non-fiction, do you have to understand the author's backstory, the author's history, to understand what the book is trying to teach? I mean, I have a lot of non-fiction books here, right? If I read Sapiens, do I need to understand who the author is and his backstory? Do I need to understand who his parents were? Do I need to understand what school he went to? do I need to understand why he decided to write this book, to understand what he's trying to say in it? And that's a tough one, because I guess understanding his education and his background and his reason for writing helps us understand how much we can trust it, how reliable it is. But that said, it doesn't really change the facts in it. So, yeah, actually, interesting point you raised there, Ken. Do you agree that we must understand the origins to understand the meaning of anything? Let me know that down in the comments. Yeah, he goes on. He says the exact same thing here, a paragraph later. He said, the meaning of all these things is dependent on their origin. Again, I'd say the origin can be an influence, but I don't think meaning is dependent on it in all cases. I don't know. And then he starts being like a little bit homophobic and blah blah blah, and he's like, oh, if you're not a Christian, where'd you get your morals from? You know, that old argument. He's like, if you're not a Christian, consider these questions. Are you married? Why? Why not just live with someone without bothering to marry? Actually good questions. I'm not married, but I plan to be married. I am living with someone without bothering to be married, but we'd like to get married one day. Mostly for like the kind of legal things, but also because it's a nice kind of celebration of our relationship. That's what we see it as. Do you believe marriage is one man for one woman for life? No. Why not 6 wives? That makes you happy. Go for it. Or 6 husbands. If that makes you happy, go for it. What happens if your son comes home and says, Dad, I'm going to marry Bill tomorrow? Well, first I'd say, I'm not Dad, I'm Mum, but okay. And then I'd say, it's a bit quick, isn't it? I've not met Bill yet. But once I'd met Bill, if I liked Bill, I'd be like, good on you, son. Good on you. Would you say, you can't do that, son. It's just not done? No. And don't try and equate homophobia to morality here. They're not even the same thing. What if your son replied, yes it is, Dad. There are even churches that will marry us. If you're not a Christian, what will you say to your son? I'm not a Christian, and I'd say, good on you. You know, if he's a nice guy and he's happy. Can you have any basis, any justification for insisting that he should not have a homosexual life if he wants to? No, because there's no reason why he shouldn't. This is the stupidest example of like trying to show why we should have a single authority for morals. The stupidest example. Okay, when attempting to justify why they do or do not have a particular belief, many people today have many opinions rather than reasons. I agree, people should have reasons for their opinions, but I also think this statement is completely belittling opinions. It's completely underestimating the importance of opinions. I think opinions are a great important thing. They can spark discussions. I do believe people need reasons for their opinions, but I don't think they're separate things. I don't think we should mock opinions and be okay with reasons. I think they're joined, they're connected. Know what I mean? I recall one programme on Australian television in which people were interviewed and asked to express their opinions concerning a government department's ruling to grant homosexual couples benefits similar to those received by married heterosexual couples. Many of the opinions expressed went like this: it's not right, it goes against my grain, it's wrong, it's not normal, it's bad, it shouldn't happen, it's not good, it shouldn't be allowed. Why shouldn't they? People can do what they like. And other similar expressions were stated. Again, okay, these are opinions without reasons, so in that case, I agree with you, Ken. Not really all that valid in an argument. However, one of these is different to the other. Why shouldn't they? That's asking for a reason, that's not just like an opinion. So that one I don't mind too much. He goes on and says, after I had spoken on creation at one public school, a student said to me, because you know I speak about creation because I'm a really important speaker and I speak about things. Sorry, that's like a throwback to the seminar joke in my last video. Go watch it if you haven't already. So a student said to me, I want to write my own rules about life and decide what I want to do. I said, you can do that if you like, son, but in that case, why can't I shoot you? He replied, you can't do that. Why not? Because it's not right, he said. I said to him, why is it not right? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? He looked perplexed and said to me, because it's not right. The student had a problem. On what basis could he decide that something was right or wrong? Again, this is just one of these like weird oversimplified examples that Ken likes to give of him one-upping people who dare challenge him. Ken really oversimplifies things because it's not a kind of like, it's either all okay or none of it's okay logic. And it's not a case of an individual wants to make their rules and another individual wants to make their rules and another individual wants to make their rules, because that would end in chaos. We know that. It's a case of people thinking we should make rules that suit everyone, that suit the greater good. It's about democracy. It's not just everyone wanting to do whatever they want all the time and saying, well, you can't do that because I don't like it. That's not what it's about. That's not what anything's about. It's, I've spoken about this before and I don't want to like repeat myself, but Ken just doesn't get life and people. He completely ignores the fact that people have empathy, that people care about other people, that sometimes it's actually in your own selfish best interests to make sure other people are okay. He forgets about things like that and just assumes that without Christianity everyone wants to go around shooting each other and raping and murdering, and that's not the case at all. Ken argues if he had no basis in an absolute authority that sets rules, it was really a battle of his opinion versus my opinion. Perhaps the strongest or cleverest person would win. But isn't that kind of the point of life? Isn't that essentially survival of the fittest? And also, I can't help but think that Ken's like, oh, without an absolute authority, that the smartest people would just win all the time. Maybe Ken wants an absolute authority that agrees with him because he's scared he's not smart enough to win himself. Oh. Okay, no, I'm sorry, that was a bit of a joke, but seriously. Christians have standards of right and wrong because they accept there is a creator, and as a creator, he has direct ownership over his creations. And then he goes on a little bit, like repeating more stuff, and then he gives this wonderful analogy. Just as a car designer provides a manual for correct maintenance of what he has designed and made, so too does our creator supply his creation with all the instructions that are necessary to live a full, free, and abundant life. God has provided his set of instructions, not out of some spiteful or killjoy design, but because he loves us and he knows what is best for us. So there you go. The Bible, it's like a car manual, but for us. The Bible is our maintenance guides, obviously. It all makes sense now. I'm suddenly a Christian. The next part of the chapter basically talks about indoctrinating kids from a young age and how parents are terrible because they're not teaching kids that Genesis is right from the beginning. Just strange to me. Again, Ken actually does make quite a good point here, but then completely ruins it afterwards. But he starts by saying, if children see rules as no more than parents' opinions, then why should they obey them? I think this is a brilliant point. As a kid, I was always like given rules and stuff, but I was also given reasons behind them. I was told not to run out into the street because a car might hit me. I was told not to do this because of this, not to do this because of this. I was always given a reason of I might hurt myself. This is dangerous for this reason. You shouldn't do this because it'll upset these people. You shouldn't say this because it'll hurt these people. They're the rules I was given. I wasn't just told because I say so. I was given real reasons, and I think that's a great way to raise kids. So in that case, kind of agree with you there, Ken. However, he ruins it, because he goes on to say, it does make an enormous difference when children are taught from the earliest age that God is creator and that he has determined what is right and wrong. The rules come from God, and therefore they must be obeyed. So he's saying, parents, don't just say, do this because I said so. The correct way to do it is, do this because God says so. It's just as stupid and just as useless for kids, really, because again, they still don't understand any reasons behind why they should or shouldn't do something. You're just changing because I said so to because God said so. It's just as stupid. Skipping forward a little bit, it just gives another story of, once at church, a father came to me and said, me, and I gave him the best advice in the world because I'm Ken Ham and I can do that. I don't know what that voice was, I'm sorry. Okay, so he goes on and he talks about like schools and stuff, and he says, students in most of our schools are given a totally anti-biblical foundation. The foundation of evolution. Or how about the foundation of science as opposed to stories, or whatever. This foundation, of course, will not allow the Christian structure to stand. How is that a bad thing? So many parents have said it was when their children went to high school or college that they drifted away from Christianity. Many rejected Christianity entirely. How interesting that at the age where they're being taught to think for themselves and question things themselves, and they're looking at actual facts and science and not just what they've been told. How interesting that that is the point where they start to question Christianity and reject it. That's not a coincidence, by the way. And then he goes back and starts just moaning at people having opinions without reasons again. And he's like, many Christians may be against abortion, sexual deviancy, and other moral problems in society, yet they cannot give proper justification for their opposition. Most Christians have an idea of what is right and wrong, but they do not understand why. Like, I'm sorry, but again, the why cannot be because God said so. You need a serious reason. Why should our opinion be more valid than that of someone else's? I guess that's an excellent point, but again, that's why reasons come in and facts come in and understanding, you know, people's well-being, and that's why we have democracy and we have groups of people to make decisions and other groups of people who vote on decisions and so on. Stop overlooking that, Ken. All these issues relate to an understanding of what the Bible is all about. It is not just a guidebook for life. But you literally just compared it to a car repair manual. So is it a life repair manual? Or is it not a life repair manual? I'm confused. It is the very basis upon which all our thinking must be built. Unless we understand that book, we will not have proper understanding of God and his relationship to man, and thus what a Christian worldview is all about. Interesting here that he's actually bringing up that all of this, like, Christian stuff, Christian beliefs, Christian morals rest on a book. Take that book away. Where's the evidence of God? Where's this proof of God? Where are we going to get any corroborating evidence that God has ever said any of these things or given any of these morals and rules? Take away that book and you do have nothing. It's interesting that Ken realizes this, but he doesn't realize the implication of this. Oh, no, okay. And then he comes back to, like, gay marriage and stuff. So you know how, like, loads of people on TV and in videos and stuff, you see them going, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Not Ken. His line is, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Bruce. I love this so much. What happened to Steve? Did Adam dump Steve because he's a promiscuous homosexual with no sexual morals and got with Bruce? He got with Bruce instead. Sorry, this line just made me laugh. Can I get Adam and Bruce on a t-shirt, please, with like a big heart? And then yeah, he just argues against gay marriage by going, when one understands that there are specific roles which God ordained for men and women, one has reasons for standing against any legislation that weakens or destroys the family. Again, he's trying to say reasons, but he's not. He's just doing the whole, because God said so thing again. God has absolute authority over our lives, but why? Where's the proof he created us? What gives him that authority? Why should I give this authority to someone who I don't even know if he's real or not? I'm kind of waving this book around a lot, I'm sorry. I have been to Bible studies where groups are discussing abortion. Abortion. Many of the members give their opinion about what they think, but they give no reference to the Bible. They say such things as, what if their daughters were raped? Or if the baby were going to be deformed? Or if somebody wouldn't be able to cope looking after the baby, then perhaps abortion would be acceptable. This is where our churches are falling by the wayside. The idea that everyone can have an opinion devoid of a basis in biblical principles. Oh, I'm sorry that people have human emotions and actually care about other people. That's so terrible, isn't it? To consider the well-being of the mother and baby. Horrible, disgusting, yeah, so bad. You're right, this is where society is falling apart. People have just stopped parroting what they read in an old book and started actually thinking and caring about other people's health and well-being and their feelings. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. He argues that it's not a matter of autonomous human opinion about what is developing in a mother's womb. You're right, it's not. It's the mother's. opinion that matters. But of course he misses that point again and says, "It's a matter of what God says in his word concerning the principles that must govern our thinking. It's time we woke up. When it comes to such issues, we must take God's view, not man's." And then he just goes on and gives more stories about at one meeting a lady responded with this, another place was this, and they're just stupid stories as always. I don't really want to waste your time going into them. We're nearly at the end of the chapter here, but I do want to bring up this one little kind of point that he tried to end on. He argues that opinion is bad and everything needs biblical foundations because, and he gives this example of how at a school there are parents who say, "Oh, well, my child shouldn't be punished because these other kids did this bad thing and they weren't punished." And then he tries to compare this by saying, for example, does this mean that police should not prosecute a driver they happen to catch with a high alcohol content in his blood just because many of the drivers who have also had high alcohol content were not caught? Again, he's kind of oversimplifying and misinterpreting other people's views. Kind of see what he means to some extent, but on the other hand, I'm like, well, if we're going by your rules, Ken, then apparently no, this driver shouldn't be prosecuted because where in the Bible does it say that you shouldn't drive drunk? So yeah, he has a habit of like twisting things to suit his needs, and that's a bit of an issue. Again, he just kind of ends this chapter by saying what we are seeing in our society is an outward expression in more and more of its naked ferocity of the rejection of God and his absolutes, and the growing belief that only human opinions matter. And that's kind of the basis for this chapter. He thinks everyone hates God and it's ruining society, and that we should all look to Genesis for the answers, and when we're struggling with something, we should turn to the answer of, "Oh, well, you can't do that because God said so." And apparently this has something to do with evolution being a lie. I don't really get that connection, but basically my takeaway from this chapter is Ken is homophobic and probably a little bit sexist, and he's just not a very nice person, and he likes to use the excuse of, well, God says, to back up his hate and stuff. Anyway, I don't know how long this video was or is gonna be. That was just one chapter from Ken Ham's The Lie Evolution, which I am going to keep reading. I do want to try and spread the videos out a bit, because I don't want to like overwhelm you too much with like the same content over and over, but I am going to be reading more of this because it is a silly book. I hope we get into some actual like evolution talk soon, and not just, oh my god, the gays are ruining society, as he keeps going on and on and on about. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. I keep flicking through this book and coming to this subheading called Nazism and Evolution, which I'm very, very keen to read to see what he has to say. So yeah, we're going to keep reading this, but let me know your thoughts on this chapter and everything I've read in this book so far. I will link the other two videos in this series down in the description below. But for now, please let me know your thoughts. I really love hearing them. And if you made it through this far, thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you again soon. You know who's awesome? Everyone who is supporting me on Patreon this month. And that includes Mark Dauner, Lachie Scott, Jadeon Sheppard, Jaylee Moore, Sir Michael Moore, and Matthew Meinema. A huge thank you to all of you and everyone else who is supporting me on Patreon. You're all listed here on the end screen or down in the comments. You guys can go check them out. But for now, just a huge thank you to all of you. I really do appreciate it.